Welcome to Hannity. Tensions rise between the U.S. and Israel after the Obama administration betrays America's closest ally in the Middle East. I'm Judge Janine Pirro, in for Sean tonight. The fallout continues after the Obama administration failed to veto a United Nations resolution that declares Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank a, quote, flagrant violation of international law. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to condemn the Obama administration for the unprecedented move. Take a look.
American administrations and Israeli governments have disagreed about settlements, but we agreed that the Security Council was not the place to resolve this issue. We knew that going there would make negotiations harder and drive peace further away. And as I told John Kerry on Thursday, friends don't take friends to the Security Council. I'm encouraged by the statements of our friends in the United States, Republicans and Democrats alike. They understand how reckless and destructive this UN resolution was. They understand that the Western Wall isn't occupied territory.
President-elect Donald Trump is throwing his support behind Israel and tweeted out, quote, "The United Nations has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together, talk, and have a good time." So sad. Joining us now with a reaction is the author of Ally, Deputy Minister for Diplomacy in Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, Ambassador Michael Oren. All right, hello, Ambassador. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Can you tell us why Israel was so deeply offended by this resolution?
Good to be with you, Judge. We were hurt. We were outraged by this appalling resolution. Understand, this resolution labels over 500,000 of our citizens criminals, violators of international law. As the Prime Minister Netanyahu said, it takes our holiest places, the Western Wall, and labels them illegally occupied territory. The resolution exposes us to sanctions and boycotts, as Palestinians and others will try to use this resolution as a basis for suing us in international criminal courts around the world. It's a greater threat than the missiles fired at us, because we can believe that. It's a terrible, terrible move. And it sends a horrible message to the world about what America cares about, what the UN cares about. About 2 hours from where I'm sitting and talking to you here, Judge, is Syria, where over 400,000 people have been butchered. 5 hours east of here is Iraq, where tens of thousands of people have been killed in a civil war. 3 hours south of here is the Sinai, where there's a civil war against ISIS. An hour and a half of here is Hamas. And all these millions of people are calling out to America and the UN, help us. And what does America and the UN do? They beat up on the only democracy in the Middle East.
All right, Ambassador.
Think about what America's allies think tonight.
Well, I want to look forward, Ambassador, but for a moment I want to look back. In 2011 or 2012, Susan Rice vetoed, on behalf of the United States in the UN, the same resolution. What has happened in 4 years, and did you have any notice that this was coming?
Well, I was there when Susan Rice gave that speech. I was listening to it very, very carefully, and she listed all the reasons why the United States, this administration, was against settlement, but they would never let the UN interfere and try to impose a solution, that there was only one solution, and that arose from direct negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. And by abstaining on this resolution, the Obama administration has basically backtracked and negated its own long-standing position, and a long-standing position of the United States going back to 1967, that there is no alternative to direct talks between Israelis and Arabs. Now, we knew this was going to happen. In the Knesset, where I serve as a member of Israel's parliament, we have been discussing the dangers that were looming in the 3-month window between the American elections and the inauguration of the next president. And President Obama, since the first day in office in 2009, has publicly condemned Israel, our policy in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, in our capital. And he was never going to desist from that. He was going to keep on coming at us on that. And we assumed that this window would be a very dangerous time for us.
And it is. It is. But, Ambassador, what can you do about this now? And what can you expect from the Trump administration going forward?
Well, you know about the Iron Dome, Judge.
Yes.
It's an advanced anti-ballistic system that has protected Israel's skies for years now, and it takes down enemy missiles coming at us. But we need a diplomatic and a legal Iron Dome, where the United States says to those entities and countries that want to do us harm, that want to boycott us, that want to sanction us, if you touch the state of Israel, you're going to have to come to us, because we're going to protect Israel. We're going to protect Israel by making anybody who hurts Israel pay for it diplomatically, pay for it financially. And frankly, if the incoming Trump administration would move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that would send a very powerful message that the United States has no intention of conforming with this appalling resolution.
And with respect to those countries, and I want to make one thing clear, had the United States vetoed that in the Security Council, it would not have passed. But the signal has been made. Can America undo the resolution? No, based on a new president.
America can't undo the resolution. It cannot, but it can make those who try to apply the resolution, it can make them pay for it. America has a lot of tools in its hands, Judge. 20% of the UN's budget comes from the United States, and without it, the United Nations would be in very rough shape.
And very quickly, you have high hopes for President Trump and the relationship with Israel?
We do have high hopes. We have high hopes always with the United States of America. At the end of the day, we have no alternative to America as our ultimate ally, and the United States has no alternative to Israel as its ultimate ally. There's no other country in this region which is technologically and military proficient, and no other country which is unreservedly pro-American. No one's burning American flags in the streets of Tel Aviv from where I'm talking to you from.
All right. Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you so much for joining us this evening. All right, and here now with more reaction is the author of Defeating Jihad, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, as well as Fox News contributor Rick Grinnell. All right, Dr. Gorka, I'm going to start with you. The message, as the ambassador just indicated, is very clear, and that is, as 400,000 people die in Syria and the UN Security Council does nothing, they take a disputed land issue, prejudge it, and make it as though an international ruling is in effect and should control. What do you say?
Merry Christmas, Judge. It's outrageous. This is a lame duck presidency. But what's happened in the last 8 years? The Obama administration has created a global chaos. The world is on fire wherever you look, north, south, east, and west. Europe, you see Russia invade Ukraine. Asia, you see China build fake islands and then put military installations on them. Then you see disaster after disaster in the Middle East, the rise of ISIS, the rise of Boko Haram, on and on and on. And what did they do? Instead of following the Hippocratic Oath for the last month of their administration, the do no harm promise, what do? They throw gasoline on the fire, and they side with everybody else who really is using the United Nations to execute a form of veiled anti-Semitism. There's nothing else that you can describe this as.
Well,
go ahead.
Certainly, it is a reverse of a position that the United States has taken in the past, Rick Grinnell. And there are those who say that the United States is the one who was behind the resolution in the first place.
Look, there's no question. I spoke specifically and directly to the French ambassador to the United States, and he told me that they have been working on the Obama administration for weeks. Then we see the media from New Zealand that have now come out and confirmed the fact that the New Zealand foreign minister has had multiple conversations with John Kerry, trying to find the language that would be acceptable so that the United States would abstain. So strategically, Judge, what we're looking at here is this has been weeks in the making. This is a plan of Ben Rhodes and Barack Obama. and they have secretly tried at the end of the administration to give it to Israel and to try to blame this on New Zealand or Egypt or others. Well, they have been the ones negotiating the language. They have been the ones that have been secretly trying to figure out a way, how do they kick Bibi Netanyahu on the way out the door. Don't forget that the Barack Obama team tried to defeat Bibi Netanyahu. This is a long-standing problem that we've had from the Cairo speech at the beginning of the Obama administration to now this lame duck session where Ben Rhodes and Barack Obama are trying to kick Israel.
Dr. Gorka, do you see Donald Trump doing something significant in terms of in any way reversing this decision by the Security Council?
I think the ambassador was right. Formally in international law, this kind of resolution can't be unilaterally undone. But America is the most powerful nation in the world. It is the only nation that can really do something about this by itself in terms of putting pressure on every nation responsible for this resolution. And on top of that, I think after January 20th, Judge, I think the White House will have a very different attitude to the utility of the United Nations and also the importance of Israel, which is one of, if not our most important ally in the Middle East.
And Rick, as it relates to the United Nations and Israel, Israel is now apparently calling in all of the foreign ministers from other countries, and they will exert whatever diplomatic punishments if we can call it that. Do they have any leverage at all in a situation like this?
They do have leverage, and they have a lot of leverage in Donald Trump. Let's make it clear. President-elect Trump is going to be Israel's best ally. He's going to make sure that this is a priority. This resolution is dangerous, Judge, in that it literally encourages countries to find ways to punish Israel for not giving up land to the Palestinians. This is a land dispute between two countries, and now we have an international body like the United Nations Security Council taking sides and saying that the world should punish Israel for not taking the Palestinian side, for not giving up land. It's really outrageous, and it directly affects every single nation. Donald Trump knows this, and he'll make it a priority.
Don't the Palestinians get money for every Israeli that they kill?
Oh, sure. Look, there's a long history of rewarding radical Islamic terrorism around the region. And what we have to make clear, and I think Donald Trump will make clear, is that this is unacceptable. We're going to stand with Israel, and we're going to make sure that every country diplomatically is punished for trying to implement this resolution.
Grinnell, thanks so much for being with us tonight. And coming up right here on Hannity.
If I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it.
A very smug President Obama says that if he were allowed to run again, he would have beaten President-elect Donald Trump. Charles Hurt, Teslin Figaro, and Noel Nickper will be here. And later,
are you saying then that you would not sit down with President-elect Trump if he invited you to the White House to meet on common ground?
Oh, no, I won't go. I'm not going to sit down with him. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pretend.
Sore loser Democrats are already drawing a line in the sand, saying that they will not work with President-elect Trump. Doug Schoen and Frank Luntz will join us later. That and much more as Hannity continues.
Say goodbye to 2016 and bring in the new year with the Fox News Channel. We're live from the heart of Times Square, bringing celebrations all around the country, hearing from the people, the biggest musical performances, and your favorite Fox personalities. Kimberly Guilfoyle and Eric Bowling host live, and so much more. New Year's Eve. Our must-see coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Right here on Fox News Channel.
Good evening and live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. President Obama and Japan's Prime Minister visit the USS Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor to pay their respects to America's war dead. The president saying the Prime Minister's visit is a historic gesture and shows that wars can end and enemies can become allies. The Prime Minister did not apologize for the December 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, but did concede Japan must never repeat the horrors of war again. Cuba announces its economy fell 1% this year. That's its first economic pullback in nearly 25 years. A surge in U.S. tourism was not enough to offset a plunge in aid from economically troubled Venezuela. The 55-year-old U.S. embargo also getting some of the blame for Cuba's economic problems, costing Cuba $4.5 billion last year. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now, back to Hannity.
Welcome back to Hannity. There are just 23 days until President Obama is officially out of office. But he wants you to know that if allowed, he would have beaten Donald Trump and won a third term. Take a listen to this one.
The majority does buy into the notion of a one America that is tolerant and diverse and open and full of energy and dynamism, and the problem is it doesn't always manifest itself in politics, right? I am confident in this vision because I'm confident that if I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it.
Not surprisingly, President-elect Trump fired back on Twitter, writing, quote, President Obama said that he thinks he would have won against me. He should say that, but I say no way. Jobs leaving, ISIS, Obamacare, etc. Joining me now is Fox News contributor Charles Hurt, former National Justice Director for Bernie Sanders, Tesla and Figaro, and Republican strategist Noel Nickper. All right, I will start with you, Charles. Let me ask you this. Is he delusional, or is he depressed, or is he afraid people are going to forget him? Why is he talking about this?
I think all of the above. I don't have any idea what he was even talking about before he got to the part where he said that, if I'd run again, I certainly would have won. That's the kind of taunt you hurl over your shoulder as you're walking running away from the bar fight. But the bottom line is he may not have been on the ballot this time, but his policies were, and his policies have been on the ballot for the past 8 years. And while, yes, he did win re-election in 2012, Democrats have lost 1,000 seats based on his policies, based on his record. And so, what he's saying right there is just flat out simply not true.
All right, and Tesla, isn't he the one who said, I will take this personally, if she doesn't get elected, it's really a third term for me?
You're absolutely right. I mean, President Obama galvanized every politician, every pastor, and every entertainer. And in the words of the judge, the motion was denied. They presented a third-year term, and no one was buying into it. And it's not about, President Obama's ego and how he feels about how he would have won. It was the 900 legislators who lost. It was the American people who lost jobs. It was the American people who lost income. It was the American people who lost affordable health care. So instead of him talking about how he would have won, let's talk about the people that lost and focus on that. It was the DNC that lost integrity. So perhaps as we go into the new year, they can figure out how to not make it about the shiny object and focus on the grassroots like the Republicans have done, and perhaps they'll see a win. Let's just get over it, get off the field. You've lost, pick your toys up and go home and try again.
And Noel, just as Heslin was saying, I mean, all you have to do is look at the facts. It wasn't just Donald Trump. The Senate, the House, the gubernatorial races. I mean, this was a trifecta.
Well, you know what? So much for a smooth transition. You remember when Obama said, let's make this smooth, let's do the best we can. Whatever on that. You know, it's just like he believes his own rhetoric. And how arrogant to sit there and say, if I would have run for a third term, I would have won. Really? Slap in the face Hillary Clinton, slap in the face the voters, the middle-class voters that voted you out. And although he may have won some of those states that Trump won, the fact of it is that Trump won.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they turned around and they, not only did Trump win, but they changed parties, and that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
All right, Charles, I'm going to ask you to listen to what David Axelrod said about Obama not accepting that the election was a referendum on his view of the world.
He doesn't accept that the election was a verdict on his view of where the country should be going. He points out that she got a majority of the vote. He feels that he would have won the election. But there's no doubt that there is some criticism implicit in his remarks.
And to me, the criticism is of Hillary Clinton, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I must say that this is the one part of all of this that I've enjoyed immensely, is just how much he throws her under the bus at every turn. And he was doing that the day after, just saying, talking about how much harder he worked when he ran for re-election and ran for the first time, and talking about when he beat her, how hard he worked in Iowa in order to beat her. But can you imagine if George W. Bush in 2008 had come out after the election and just trashed John McCain after Barack Obama won? No decent person would do this. And to have the President of the United States now doing this, I think it really does. It says a lot about both how he is governed and kind of the way he is going to, I think, be remembered going forward.
And Teslin, he said in this interview, he says, even people who disagreed with me says that my vision is the right vision. Now, how do you justify that? How do you rationalize that, Teslin?
Well, I rationalize it that people got tired of hearing a vision. They wanted to see action. Anybody can talk about what you're going to do, but see, when it came down to the reality of what was actually done, people were over it. We see that as we look across the states, like we've mentioned several times, with all the legislative seats that were lost. This grassroots movements that Republicans have been able to successfully implement came from the ground up. And so although he gave a good speech, a great vision, when it really came down to the reality, people were over it. And for him to say that he was not on the ballot, that he did not instruct Clinton on how to, produce the same type of results that he did, is just a flat-out lie. He instructed everyone around the country to support Hillary Clinton. We saw that with Bernie Sanders and the DNC leaks. And he just will not accept the fact that you lost. You put everything on the field, you left it there, and you lost. And even Jay-Z and Beyonce couldn't pull this race in.
They talked about the fact that the Democrats had the ground game and Donald Trump didn't. The fact that he won and his whole party won, what does it tell you?
Well, it tells you that they did not have the ground game, number one. And number two, they really didn't have the ball and they didn't play the right way. And, I think Americans are really ready to see Israel take a respectful place and ready for prosperity.
All right. Thank you all for being here tonight. Coming up right here on Hannity.
Are you saying then that you would not sit down with President-elect Trump if he invited you to the White House to meet on common ground?
Oh, no, I won't go. I'm not going to sit down with him. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pretend.
Democrats already saying they will not work with President-elect Donald Trump once he's in office. Doug Schoen and Frank Luntz are here with reaction. And later, growing outrage after a Drexel University professor tweeted that he wants, quote, white genocide for Christmas. Plus, chaos at malls all over the country as Americans fight each other during the holiday shopping season. All that and much more as Hannity continues. Welcome back to Hannity. President-elect Trump is just weeks away from taking office, but the Democrats are already promising to make things tough for the new administration. Take a look at the latest example from California Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
I have no intention of pretending everything's all right, that we're going to work together. For me, as the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, where he said he's going to bring down Dodd-Frank and he's going to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, I'm going to fight him every inch of the way.
Well, let me, Congresswoman, if I could just interrupt you for 1 second, excuse me, but I just want to get this straight. Are you saying then that you would not sit down with President-elect President-elect Trump if he invited you to the White House to meet on common ground?
Oh, no, I won't go. I'm not going to sit down with him. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pretend.
Joining me now with reaction is pollster Frank Luntz and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. All right, gentlemen, I got to tell you, that language, you know, I'm going to fight him every step of the way. I mean, okay, I get the politics of it. But to sit there and actually say, as an elected congresswoman whose job is to work for her constituents and the American people, is she not violating the spirit of her oath as an elected member of Congress? I'll start with you, Frank.
Well, I don't get the politics of it. The fact is that the Democrats are going to have 25 seats up in 2018, and 10 of those seats are going to be in states that Trump won by a big margin. That actually, if a Democratic senator is watching Maxine Waters right now, she or he ought to be furious, because that's going to make it impossible for them over the next 2 years. The American people want compromise. The American people want cooperation. They want to, and I quote, get things done. They want to repeal health care. They want to repeal the Obama executive orders. They want to make real change, and they expect the politicians to work together to get it done.
Doug, didn't the American people in this last election make it so clear that they want the sides to work together? And by her digging her heels in the sand so deeply, saying, I'm not even going to meet with him, I'm not going to talk to him, what is that about, Doug?
Well, it's about playing to a narrow sliver of her constituency.
And does it do her any good?
Which it does her no good, and it does the party worse, as Frank suggests. Look, Frank's right. The American people want compromise and conciliation. It's not to say the Democrats have to agree with everything Trump does or says, but to rule out legislating, compromising, and working with him is a profound mistake, Janine.
Well, I have to tell you, Frank, you know, you have looked at the numbers. You know what's going on. You've got Nancy Pelosi now, who's got no credibility, but, you know, got reelected to her position because she apparently has the money. Aren't the Democrats understanding? They lost seats in the House. They lost seats in the Senate. They lost the White House. They lost the gubernatorial races. They lost something like 50% of, you know, the state houses, both houses in this legislators in the states. Are they tone deaf?
I think so, but this also puts pressure on the Republicans to actually make this happen. I can't imagine a viewer of this show right now who will accept Republican failure to repeal Obamacare. I can't imagine a viewer accepting the Republican inability to stop wasteful Washington spending and to reform our out-of-control tax code. Now, if the Democrats want to listen, if they want to be smart, they're going to participate in this effort and they're going to have their voices heard. But if not, then it is still paramount on the GOP to deliver exactly what they promised on Election Day.
But the GOP can do it, can't they, Doug? They've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the White House.
You know, they can do it, but as we saw with Obamacare, you do better for yourself with a broad bipartisan constituency rather than a narrow constituency. And the flip side of Frank's point is if Obamacare is repealed, as I expect it to be, the American people and the Democrats should fight to maintain the coverage that was extended in a more cost-effective way. There are ways to cut the budget that protects social programs. Democrats can and should cooperate with the new administration because it's good politics, it's good government, and it's just plain right. Common sense.
And Frank, given that the American people feel so strongly about obstructionists, I mean, don't the Democrats now become the obstructionists?
The smartest strategy for the GOP right now is to save each of these interviews. Every time a Democrat comes up and says, I'm not going to meet with the president, I'm not going to work with the Republicans, save that. And then beginning in the middle of next year, start to run those ads in places like Montana and Idaho, places that Donald Trump won big, and to ask the Democratic senator from that state, do you agree or disagree? You could see Republican gains in 2018, even though typically you'd have a bad election year for the incumbent party. It's the dumbest strategy I could ever imagine the Democrats doing. And I don't get it.
And Doug, you know, knowing Donald Trump as I do, he will work across the aisle. He will do everything he can to bring people to his side and to listen. And I think that the Democrats can only look bad. Agree?
You know, I couldn't agree more. I know Donald Trump. I've worked for him in a business capacity, and I know him to be a practical man. He met with Senator Schumer. They have the basis for cooperation, but the Democrats would make a mistake putting in Keith Ellison as head of the DNC and following the precepts of Maxine Waters.
All right,
bad politics, gentlemen. A big mistake.
Thank you, gentlemen. And coming up, a Drexel University professor is under fire. Listen to this. After tweeting he wanted, quote, white genocide for Christmas. Plus, scenes like this played out in malls across the country as Americans battle each other during holiday shopping. Our panel will have reaction to both stories. That and much more as Hannity continues. Welcome back to Hannity. An associate professor of politics at Drexel University is under fire this week for some very inflammatory tweets. On Christmas Eve, Dr. George Chickeriello-Maher tweeted, quote, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. Chickeriello-Maher then doubled down in another tweet, writing, quote, to clarify, when the whites were massacred during the Haitian Revolution, that was a good thing indeed. The university was quick to criticize its professor, releasing a statement that reads in part, Professor Chickeriello-Maher's comments are utterly reprehensible, deeply disturbing, and do not in any way reflect the values of the university. Chickeriello-Maher has since clarified his remarks, claiming that his tweets were purely satirical. He told Reuters that white genocide is, quote, a figment of the racist imagination. It should be mocked, and I'm glad to have mocked it. Joining me now for reaction, our psychology expert, Dr. Gina Loudon, Trump Transition Team Executive Committee member, and Reverend Daryl Scott, and Turning Point USA founder, Charlie Kirk. All right, I'll start with you, Dr. Loudon. What is going on? Is this satirical, or is this rhetorical, or is this real?
I don't know about you, Judge, but this makes me realize, indeed, I spent far too much time in academia. It's a wonder you and I aren't as brainwashed as some of the folks that come out of that. But, you know, the good thing is at least this one particular academic was being honest about the level of radicalism that is prevalent in our universities today. So I kind of hope he keeps tweeting. I think it exposes what the left is really all about these days.
All right. And Reverend Daryl Scott, what do you make of this?
I think maybe, first of all, the guy had too much eggnog to drink over the holidays and got in front of the computer, and his hands didn't sync with his brain. And then he realized the enormity of what he said, and he tried to dial it back. But he needs to be fired. That's what needs to happen.
But what about the First Amendment? Let's talk about that, Reverend. A lot of people agree with you. But what about the First Amendment?
But he has a responsibility. You know, sometimes when you take certain public positions, you abrogate your First Amendment liberties. I mean, you have liberty, but you shouldn't take license. You have to have a responsibility to those that are under your sphere of influence, so as you just don't say anything because of the fact that you can influence people in a negative way. This guy needs to get fired from his job. That's what he needs to get. Maybe he can start his own school or something.
And Charlie Kirk, I mean, you've been talking about campuses for a long time. I imagine there are a lot of students who today agree with him.
Well, not as many as I think the mainstream media would like us to believe. What I think is most disturbing about this incident is that the media is acting like this is somehow isolated. And you know what our project has done in the last couple of weeks is called ProfessorWatchlist.org. We've been documenting these examples of these radical professors that have been going completely off the rails. And we've been getting messages and emails from parents and students that said, yeah, that's nothing. Wait till you hear what's going on at my school. Another example that's been in the news lately is a class that, yes, people pay money for at the University of Wisconsin-Madison that says the problem with whiteness. I mean, it's unbelievable. And this is not an isolated incident. Higher education has been completely corrupted by the far left. And you know, we're happy to play a role in helping expose this, but I think the media needs to start to highlight how off the rails higher education has become, and this is just another example of that.
Well, we're certainly hearing more about it, and I want to go to another level of craziness and scenes that are playing out all over the country at malls. Take a look at this. And as you can see, I mean, there are all kinds of fights, hysteria, reports of gunfire at malls across the country. Some of this is, they say, being instigated by individuals. Some of it is, you know, supposedly sales. What is this a new phenomenon that we're going to be seeing? I'll start with Dr. Loudon.
Well, this is a mob mentality. This is similar to the same anonymity people feel they have when, for example, they get on Twitter and they spew their rhetoric, and then people join in thinking, well, nobody really knows who I am. If you have two people in a store, Judge, and they both want the same item, you're not going to see this sort of fighting because there's only two people. But when you have a mob like that, there tends to be a feeling of anonymity psychologically in those numbers, and so people act completely differently than they might act if they knew they were going to ever be identified. So I think that beginning to call these people out and to identify them individually might help a little bit. But these are the reasons why many of us sadly shop online, and why the reason why merchants all over the country in some cases are really hurting these days, because people don't want to encounter this if they go to a mall.
All right, and Reverend Scott, you know, there's a lot of talk about liability in situations like this. You know, we've got SWAT teams responding, police are responding, reports of gunfire. I mean, what do malls have to do, you know, to stop this? I mean, all of this for the sake of a few bargains, and at the end of the day, there's only two things available?
Yeah, actually, it's for the sake of a Facebook post or a Twitter post, because people do this and instigate this just so they can get likes or whatever on Facebook. It seems as if rioting has become fashionable in America, and it was promoted by the left. We know that, and it's become fashionable. And you know, we have the powers that be that are slow to criticize it and act as if we're exercising our American right to riot, and it's getting out of hand, and it's gotten out of hand. And store owners are going to take necessary precautions, and then they're going to be accused of profiling, they're going to be accused of racism, simply because there's a certain demographic, there's a certain collective that are usually behind all of this rioting.
All right,
and
and
when
Charlie,
they take precautionary measures against it, they'll be criticized for it.
Charlie, what would you say the demographic is? Is it young people behind this kind of thing, getting their rocks off here?
It's mostly young people, but I'll have to say, in the last 24 hours, Amazon Prime subscriptions, I bet, went up through the roof. I mean, the more that people keep on seeing this, malls are already as enjoyable as it is during the holiday season. People see this, they're just going to get behind their laptop and keep on using Amazon and these digital online shopping. And I do agree with the previous comments that say rioting and this kind of behavior is now kind of glorified through social media. It's a way to get a couple cheap likes and become an instant celebrity, but it needs to be locked down immediately.
All right, thanks so much. And coming up, after the terror attack in Germany, do moderate Muslims need to do more to speak out against what is happening? Brigitte Gabriel and Imam Elahi will weigh in. And later, legendary Star Wars actress Carrie Fisher passed away earlier today. We'll have details about her life that you might not know about. That and more as Hannity continues.
Governor Tuck, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Also work to keep our country safe from terrorism. We've seen Islamic terror attacks from Paris to Belgium to Orlando to San Bernardino to the World Trade Center. To the World Trade Center. Think of that. One attack after another after another. So let me state this as clearly as it can be stated. I am going to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country.
That was President-elect during his recent thank you tour vowing to fight radical Islam. After the latest terror attack in Europe and the radical Islamist threat growing around the world, do Muslims here in America need to speak out more to help to try to prevent these attacks from happening? Joining me now with reaction from the Islamic House of Wisdom, Imam Muhammad Ali Elahi, and from Act for America, Brigitte Gabriel. All right, good evening. I'm going to start with you, Imam. We've got this Islamic threat. You don't deny that?
Well, Judge, before I
That's
start...
a yes or no. Let's start with a premise. There is an Islamic threat that is facing the United States, correct? Yes or no?
Well, let me answer this way. First of all, I'm going to answer your question, but let me first of all say Amin to the Pope Francis prayer for peace in Christmas ceremony.
I'm happy
peace for
the
Syria,
Pope.
peace for Yemen, peace for Iraq, peace for Holy Land, for Africa, and also peace for America, and America free of racism and hatred and intimidation and violence and crimes and everything.
What's your point?
My point is that, first of all, the expression of Islamic radical is kind of hijacking the identity of the Muslim.
You don't like the term.
It is like somebody, Judge, like somebody
Can I ask you a question?
steal your
Who was
credit
responsible
card,
for the World Trade Center? Who was responsible for San Bernardino, Orlando, Paris?
We need to deal with this one.
You know what? You got all your time.
I'm saying that the point of President-elect...
This is exactly the problem. This is exactly the problem we have in this country. It's because imams like him, when they are put on the spot and asked the question directly, are not even coming forward and answering the question. So how can we expect them to urge their followers to come forward with information about radicals who are plotting to attack us? That's the problem. We need to see more patriotism on the part of the Muslim community and less terrorism.
Brigitte, the Muslim community is not coming forward. So, Imam, I'm going to give you another chance.
Yes.
I'm going to give you another chance. Otherwise, we're going to finish totally with Brigitte. All right? Here's the chance. Should the family of the San Bernardino attackers who saw the weapons, who saw all of the instruments that they used, should they have said something, and why didn't they?
We have to condemn terrorism. We have to do something about it. President Trump must do something about it.
Okay,
and if
what
you
should
are
he
really,
do?
and the way to do it, I believe, Judge, you can take care of ISIS, Al-Qaeda in 1 month, but this is the way to defeat the terrorism, is let the CIA don't train Al-Qaeda in Syria, and Saudi Arabia don't send military and money for them, then the Israeli don't send media and medicine for them. Let us deprive them the resources,
Imam,
and they would die.
do you agree that we've got to prevent the radical Islamic extremists from coming to this country and killing us and killing Muslims too? Yes or no?
We are absolutely against any radical.
Say
Islamic,
yes.
Christian, any
I am
of them.
going to tell the court stenographer you said yes. Now to Brigitte. Brigitte, why can't he say
beating
yes?
around the bush. He is beating around the bush and does not want to answer the question. You asked him about the families who saw in San Bernardino where they were putting the bomb together in the house. How come the mother did not come forward? How come nobody else from the family came forward? This is the problem. They are harboring and supporting and protecting and covering up for the terrorists who want to blow us up. And imams like him are the first part of the problem.
I got one more
because
question.
they're not saying anything and they're not answering the question.
I feel like I'm in the ring. Now, the CARE LA chief tweets, and then he deletes it. He wishes more had died in the Russian plane crash. Hussam Ayloush. Do you condemn that, Imam?
Of course, and I talked to Dawood Walid, who is a part of our Imams Council and also in charge of CARE in Michigan, and he told me that, first of all, this guy doesn't represent the entire CARE. It was a personal. He apologized for what he said, but of course I'm against that statement, and although I'm friendly with some CARE leaders in Washington, D.C., but I have been criticized their position towards Syria. They hated so much Bashar al-Assad that sometimes they turn, blind eye to the terrorist part of opposition in Syria, and they ignore their crimes in Syria as well.
I don't want to hear about blind eyes or bad eyesight. All I want to know is that if you kill innocent people, you're the devil. But I want to thank you for being here. Brigitte, I'm going to give you the last word.
CARE is a terrorist organization, the front of Hamas in the United States. 4 of their leaders, 2 have been already in exile, 2 are rotting in American prisons, and numerous of their members have been either convicted, discharged, or arrested, and that's reality. So we don't expect that to get from
terrorism every day in America.
Star Wars icon Carrie Fisher passed away earlier today at the age of 60. FoxNews.com entertainment reporter Diana Falzone is here with more. Stay with us.
She expressed her true feelings for me.
What? Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Who is scruffy looking?